advisory work that can help you craft customized approaches to the quality assurance work you've begun. We have a new Director of Quality Assurance Implementation Solutions, quite a mouthful. We'll work on that title. Dr. Rachel Brooks, who many of you know, who will be leading this effort. Sorry about that job title. After 20 years, we're still here. We're working together in the community that makes quality matters every day. So speaking of working together, it's time to introduce our keynote panel. To be able to engage in this quality 360 approach and to support the community in this work, we need a shared understanding of how the needs of students are evolving and how our field is changing to meet those needs. This is a primary role for QM's various advisory committees, and we have invited leaders from these councils and committees here to talk about the trends they're seeing and help us think specifically about how our work is and should be changing. During our 20th anniversary of the QM community, it's fitting that we're featuring the expertise within our own committee at this year's keynote. So I would like to invite the panelists to come up, and I will just come up en masse, and I will introduce them as they come up and take a seat. So first we have Paula McDougald, who's the lead course design and development specialist for Virtual Arkansas, and she serves on our QM K-12 advisory committee. We have Amanda Hardman, who is the senior learning designer for the Colorado Community College System and a faculty member, adjunct faculty member at other colleges. And she served on this year's rubric committee for our newest higher education rubric. So if you have any bones to pick about that, please see Amanda. We have Morris Thomas, who is the assistant provost for digital and online learning at Howard University. And Morris is the chair of our academic advisory committee at QM. And last, but certainly not least, we have Fernando Sr., who is QM's representative to Latin America and the Caribbean. He's a consultant, and he serves on our International Strategy Council. So let's give him another hand of applause. So we're going to jump right in. I'm going to do myself a little time check here. Okay. So panelists, you four represent higher education, K-12, and international quality matters member institutions. We're interested in how you see QM related or QM relevant work evolving at your institutions and the communities in which you work. So we're going to start this off, and we're going to do a kind of like a lightning round, and we're going to ask one question of each of them. They're all each going to answer the same question, but they have 1 minute. So, so time them, don't let them get away with anything. And then I have individualized questions for each of them. So this is the question for all of you. And we'll start with you, Morris, and go down the line there. So what are the things we need to be tackling as a community and where QM is or could be relevant? But specifically, what excites you about the possibilities or opportunities to improve the student learning experience? And on the flip side, what challenges that you see need to be addressed? All in 1 minute. All right.
I would love to pass. So what excites me is that higher education and online learning continues to be the fastest growing sector of higher education. So everyone is really looking at what we do in this room to be significant, specifically the students and the learners. So that is exciting. And at the same time, everyone is now looking to us where years ago we were kind of scrutinized and looked at as the other. We're becoming the whole at this point. We have to look at how we can make that happen for a very evolving higher education landscape. So I might have made my minute and given some extra time.
That's awesome. All right, Paula, let's go to you.
Well, in the K-12 landscape, I think I probably could just answer this question with one word or a couple of letters, but I know you guys don't want to hear anything extra about AI this morning, so I'm going to try to answer with a different response. So really innovation and just advances in technology in the digital learning community is very exciting for the K-12 space. We are at a place right now that we've never been at before, where we can respond to student needs in a more timely way than we've ever been able to do. We can meet students where they are and take them further in ways that we've never been able to do before due to advances in technology. So that is incredibly exciting for us in the K-12 space. As far as challenges are concerned, I think reading comprehension and literacy is always going to be a challenge. I think that the opportunities that we have because of technology and the advances that we are rapidly seeing, we're kind of at a moonshot moment. If we can harness those things and use those things, maybe we can make that less of a challenge and we can see really rapid growth in reading comprehension and reading ability for our students in the K-12 space.
Thank you, Paula. All right, Fernando.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited that we are here. I'm excited that we're a community. I'm excited that it's been 20 years since a handful of people started throwing out ideas and we ended up becoming what we are. The topics of the central themes of the conference are critical. It's a momentum, it's a celebration, but it's also how we reposition ourselves into the future. And flexibility is central to us. The challenge for that, it's the opportunity, but it's also the challenge, is that flexibility, I hate to say it, but it's an inside job. It's not just about what we throw outside and what we provide to learners. It's an inside job, and I'll expand that more on my time.
All right, Amanda.
So I see the opportunity and challenge to be change and growth itself. I was just part of a book group through QM ID Association, where we read James Lang's Distracted. It was put out in the last couple of years, in which we were reminded that it is the human condition to be adaptable, that's the way that we've evolved, to be attuned to what is ever changing in our environment and to flexibly respond to those changes. So for me, it feels overwhelming, but also exciting as a designer to be designing in the spaces where we have increased awareness of and increased interest in learning more about who our diverse learners are. And we have increased models and best practices and tested principles to respond to those learner needs.
Thank you, Amanda. So now that they've sort of teed up the issues, we're going to go back to them. You know, I'm gonna be all linear this morning, and I'm gonna go back to Morris. And for Morris, I'd like you to share some challenges and opportunities beyond quality course design that should be considered. In particular, what are the signals and guideposts that matter to your students at Howard? What are challenges and opportunities? Oh, okay, I was just going to repeat that. So anyway, what signals and guideposts that matter to your students at Howard?
Sure. So for students at Howard, and I think this probably will resonate with some of your students as well, is when we think about quality, we have to realize that one of the definitions of quality deals with distinctive characteristics or attributes about any particular thing. And so before I get to speaking about specifically Howard students, I decided to look, and I like to always look at business practices outside of higher education, even though we are an industry, even though sometimes in education, we don't like to think of ourselves as such. But I always make the comment that at this point, education isn't free and we are not volunteering. So it is an industry because there's an exchange that's happening. So with that being the case, I was looking at a Forbes article and it was talking about the quality and what customers expect. And it starts to talk about customer experience, or CX, and we use terms like CX and UX. And in that, it is the ability to look at the various different parts of an organization, a company of what's being offered, and not look at them in separation, but to look at them and how they're working together all at one. And so,
I'm going to interrupt you.
okay, sure.
So your slide, since you're talking about your slide, can we advance the slide? Make sure we have this in.
This be perfect timing by the time I'm getting here.
Is that yours?
Yes. that's my
Okay, thank
slide.
you. All right. there you
And so we look at them all at one, which gets to the slide of holistic. And so companies and organizations are starting to look at the experience of their users, of their customers from a holistic standpoint. And that is not to separate the instructor, separate the content, separate the instructional design, the technology, but to look at how all of those work together. But most importantly, to look at those users or those learners and what their interaction or experience is with that. So I offer as a very shameless plug as a researcher, in addition to my administrative roles as assistant provost, I'm also an active researcher and a faculty member in our School of Education and our School of Business. And in that, I have some research that is involving what I'm calling the whole experience. And so in the whole experience, you have 5 characteristics, and we think about quality. These are characteristics that are distinctive. And so how are university students and other students so far that's been engaged in this research are looking at least 5 characteristics. They want an experience that is welcoming. So an experience that looks at hospitality. Hospitality is not a term that we usually use in learning environments. However, we do need to be hospitable, not only at the beginning of learning experiences. I think we do well with that, the first day, the intro and things of that nature, but how are we hospitable with our learners throughout a learning experience? We look at the H, which is holistic. What are the situational factors that are happening? So when you look at Fink's significant learning theory, we need to look at what are the situational factors, which includes all of us. So that's the instructional designers, the faculty members, the content. What are we bringing to that space, and who are the learners that are coming to that space? And we can start to think about how we engage them and from a holistic standpoint. Then the open deals with, the O deals with open, which deal with feedback. We cannot wait until the end of our courses to obtain feedback. We have to have an open aspect built into the delivery and design of our courses that allows for consistent feedback that's happening throughout so that we can make corrections along the way about the quality that's happening. Then liberating. Liberating in this context deal with the aspect of the learning experience having options or opportunities. And so we look at universal design for learning. As I'm talking to a lot of instructional designers, I have to spend a lot of time there. But multiple means of representation, expression, engagement. We want to make sure that that is actually really lived and offered where we have multiple ways to be flexible with the learners as far as how we're presenting the information, how we're assessing the information, how we are allowing the learners to engage in that information. And then lastly, we want these learning experiences and environments to be empowering to the learners. What are they looking for to getting from these experiences? What do they want? Where do they want to be? Not just we want to offer them and give them. And so that will allow for a holistic or a whole experience that will increase quality. That's what our guideposts are at Howard, and what I believe other students are looking for abroad as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Morris. I really like the how you define the different perspectives on flexibility and what it means to do that, and the student-centeredness of this whole model. So I appreciate that. If you would advance the slide, and that's how I'll know who to go to next. All right, well, I guess that looks like Fernando's slides. The question for
Yes.
Fernando then
Yes, all right.
is so Fernando, and this question is more so the audience will get your background here, that the current work has you focused on the Latin American and Caribbean regions. What lessons have we learned from that area that could inform how we can respond flexibly to the institutions that we're serving? How has the opportunity to prototype new ideas allowed us to expand our international outreach? And do you have some concrete examples you can share?
Sure, happy to do that. Well, first, I'll mention one thing in terms of the main topics or themes of the conference. One being flexibility. I could speak for days about flexibility. I wrote a doctoral dissertation about it, so it could go forever. But it's, as I said in my intro, it's really an inside job. So in my comments, there will be 2 points of view. One is the point of view that the work that we do starts within us. And second is that I will also provide you the international perspective from the work that we as a community do. And I'm going to do this through a story. You like stories? All right, but it's going to be an interactive story, so you have to be part of this. So it starts like this. I have my notes here. So once upon a time, there were a group of educators who were interested in having impact and expanding the possibilities of online education in the state of Maryland. So they got together, they had conversations, they tried to work together through those challenges. And every day, these professionals will try to struggle to find ways to describe, to have the language, to have the references to describe what it meant to have a quality course. It's like, what are we talking about? Show me an example. And until one day that they decided to take it upon themselves to find the answers to that question and doing it so in a research supported manner. So they submitted a proposal to the Department of Education, obtained a grant, and started doing the work, reviewing the literature. Again, not just personal stories or personal preferences. What is the literature telling us about online education? What works best? And then, let me ask a question, because we have the benefit of having some people in the audience who were part of that initial work. Could someone who was part of that initial work, please stand up.
Looking, we're looking.
They're not here yet.
So,
But there are
yes.
many from this, from the follow-up of that work, is that because of that work, the word got out and they started presenting. And people wanted to know more about it. And they wanted a copy of the first version of the rubrics. And because of that, they realized that this initiative needed to be continued and supported. And that's why QM was created 20 years ago. And that's worth celebrating. And then, because of that, QM became not just a grassroots community, even though it still maintains that character, but also grew into an international community, present in over 40 countries, over 1,500 institutions. And some of you may say, well, yeah, QM is about growth, is about having impact. But Yaping Gao, who's standing in the back, so VP for member services, she's on a personal mission to put a Quality Matters flag in every country. So, and she's doing quite well with it. And because of that, then 6 years ago, I sent an email to Deb and to Yaping with a very sketchy PowerPoint slide, just 5 pages, suggesting that I could become, or I could help promote QM in the Spanish-speaking region of Latin America. The reference is Theory U. If some of you have not read it, you should read about it. Otto Scharmer is at MIT. He has this proposal for personal, societal, and global transformation. That has been my guidance through this work. And the lessons in a short of that we obtained from the region is that we're really in a trust building journey. We need to build trust with institutions, with faculty, with learners. Our initial grassroots presence here in the US, and they're here, that are connected, and that we have an opportunity and also a responsibility to reach out to them as well. And finally, I'm going to provide some suggestions in the next session on how to take it from here and take advantage of our meeting, our gathering today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. So I just want to say that actually the work that we're doing internationally, and even K-12 is an example that QM has always been trying to broaden its aperture, because QM was initially developed in the higher ed space. And Fernando, a lot of those folks that you were trying to get to stand up, they're retired and they have passed that baton. So that's why they're not here. And we have a few staff, but there's some of the staff are struggling to get here with connections. So you might have had a few people in the room, but thank you for that, because I think that's the work that we need to continue to do. And the way that we continue to do it needs to be flexible, right? And I think that that's the point of thinking about what do we need to do and how do we need to do it. So if we could go on to the next slide. All right, so that tells me it's Paula's turn. So Paula, the question for you is pretty straightforward. So can you share with us what digital learning flexibility looks like in K-12? What's changing for K-12 students, and where do we need to improve digital learning to support the changes you see?
Absolutely. So in terms of K-12 flexibility, graduate early and move on to different things. That flexibility could also be allowing students to move at a slower pace so that they can really take the time to dig into concepts that they don't understand, that they need more time with, that they need more support with. So in terms of students, I think the pacing aspect of flexibility is definitely the biggest thing. In terms of educators, we all have a connection to education in this room. And so I think the phrase monitor and adjust really describes flexibility in a K-12 space. Tuck and roll may be another good description, because sometimes you're jumping off that bus as it's still moving and you're just doing the best you can to get where you need to be. But again, just having the ability to meet students where they are and give them what they need in real time is truly what flexibility in the K-12 space is about for educators. It makes me think of just some recent things that have happened within our organization with our own students. We had a student who came back to us with appreciation of flexibility and the opportunity that he had for continuity in his education, because we really were not even aware of the fact that this child had brain cancer and was able to continue his education while he was going through treatments. We made a visit to his school just as a check-in thing, and he was able to tell us not only his story of continuity, but also that he had just gotten an all-clear scan and he didn't miss a beat with his education going through his treatment. And so I think there's really no greater example of flexibility in a K-12 space than allowing that student to continue through such a difficult time without missing a beat in his education. Some other things that come to mind are just expanding pathways for students. So we know that not every student is a college-bound student. We know that not every student is a trade-bound student. And so something that we're really looking at in our state for flexibility for our students and offering another path for them is making a military connection. And so that's just another opportunity to give flexibility to students who maybe are in, a different path or a different trajectory than what we think a traditional student might be. Again, just having the opportunity to prepare students for what their future is, when sometimes we don't even know what that future looks like. Increasing the teacher pipeline is another thing that, we have the flexibility to do in K-12 to really promote what's going on. And your next question, I forgot.
I think, where do we need to improve digital learning to
So as
support?
far as improvements in digital learning, I think it's really important for us to remember that we have to stay plugged in. You can kind of see my little reference to staying plugged in. We cannot
I think, and this is true in K-12, but it's also true in higher ed or any space, about staying plugged in takes a lot of bandwidth. And how do you see, and yet your very first comment in the lightning round was about the potential for AI, right? To be able to be a productivity aid, a job aid, to let you do those things that you wanted to do. So how do you see the road forward with teachers who are already oversaturated with tasks to be able to stay plugged in, and so they can get to the point where they can take advantage of AI?
Wow, funny enough, I can give a little plug for a session I have this afternoon.
Oh, there
where
that was not planned, by the way.
where we're going to spend a little time talking about kind of embracing what AI can do for you as an instructional designer, and also as an educator, what you can do when you kind of maybe marry or form a relationship with AI as your instructional assistant, as your design assistant. It can't replace you by any means. You are still needed. But if you can harness the power of that technology and learn to use it to make you more productive and to make you be able to focus on things that you really need to focus on, that your expertise cannot be replaced by, some automated tool. That's the direction that you need to go to give yourself more time in the day to do the things that you really want to focus on.
Thank you. All right, so the last question is going to be for Amanda, so we'll advance that slide. And yes, so Amanda, we put your two slides together there because it just fit better there. So Amanda, can you tell us about the goals for the Colorado Online Consortium project to support identified learner needs? How does quality within the consortium incorporate QM tools and principles?
On a Southwest flight, and we were coming in at the same. I was curious about how does this come to be? We have like these two kind of silos that are not really in direct communication or connection with each other. And his response was, well, this is just poor planning. But do you know what needs to happen is there needs to be an airport run shuttle that will transport people as needed between one terminal and the next, right? That's the solution. So it was very clear to him that what we needed was some centralized solution to ensure this connectivity between these two silos of the same entity. And that moment resonated with me because 3 years ago this month, our chancellor of the Colorado Community College system laid a charge before us within the system to re-envision how we structure and deliver online courses. So we have 13 colleges within the community college system in Colorado. And what that call was then was for a centralized solution to ensure connectivity between the online offerings of our 13 community colleges. And that initiative is the Colorado Online Consortium. It is a particularly salient solution for our rural colleges. We have 7 out of our 13 community colleges identify as rural, and parallel with the Colorado Online Consortium development, they have been working to pool their limited resources as a rural college consortium. So ensuring that online courses across the system could be available to any student within that system, right, ensures equitable access to particularly our rural students. So that was part of the charge, as well as to do things like decrease competitiveness between our community colleges. But the charge wasn't just to deliver online courses in a new way, but to deliver accessible and quality courses in this new vision, in this new consortial model. And that meant that one of the first things that we needed to do within this development of the consortium was turn to learning design. And so within the first year, our charge was to develop quality standards for Colorado Online. And So one of the questions was, how do we talk to faculty, to teachers about quality? Well, the first thing we did was involve them in this process. So in the year that it took to devise, socialize, and approve our quality standards, we were working with a multi-college subcommittee that included faculty, staff, administrators across our colleges. So we were able to gain insight from our college stakeholders related to who are your students, how do you see your students' needs changing, and what are the standards that will help you respond to those student needs. And so, you know, for instance, one of our Colorado Community colleges pre-pandemic to post-pandemic saw an increase from students working with disability access services from about 2% before the pandemic to just over 10% after the pandemic. I know that's still below the national average, but it is a significant increase. Another one of our community colleges is considered an emerging Hispanic serving institution with just over 21% currently of our enrollment at that community college identifying as Hispanic and Latinx. So we had advocates within our group developing the standards to bring forward perspectives such as Gloria Ladson-Billings' culturally relevant pedagogy, New America's competencies for culturally relevant teaching, our universal design for learning guidelines and checkpoints. And so while one of the first things we did in that effort to ensure access to quality standards was to centrally support a Quality Matters subscription for all of our colleges so that our colleges did not need to choose to opt in and pay a fee that was all covered by the centralized system. But then we decided, you know, we really need to highlight certain quality criteria, certain quality expectations based on what we're hearing from our college stakeholders. And thus, on the right side of the screen here, you see a circular graphic that identifies 6 different criteria of what we are calling a healthy course based on plus some additions to Quality Matters rubric. I will read them for you because if I was sitting out there, I wouldn't be able to read this. So 1 is learner guidance, 2, measurable outcomes, 3, alignment, 4, accessibility, 5, diversity, equity, inclusion. Talking about online course quality was that we were able to leverage these quality standards to make some decisions to benefit our learners across the Colorado Online Consortium. For instance, related to learner guidance, kind of parallel with development of these standards, we determined that it was necessary to move from 13 instances of our learning management system to 1 single instance across our system. Related to that, we had to make decisions related to a common course framework. What would the common navigation, what would the common homepage, common welcome widgets, common expectations for structure, so that our learners, from a learner perspective, would have a common entry point and consistency across their experience of their courses. Quality standards influenced and was able to support certain decisions for academic technologies at the system level, such as adoption of a text-to-speech software for all students, no matter their whether they were working with an accommodations scenario with disability access services or not. And we're moving forward with acquiring an accessibility advisory tool, again, supported by recommendations that came out of these standards. So it was a critical milestone for us to begin with identifying what our standards would be for quality to benefit our students across the Colorado Online Consortium. One thing to note is that although we develop these standards with a growth mindset tool, there's actually a checklist for the Healthy Course checklist. Implementation of these standards is in the hands of all of our individual community colleges. So the next milestone was to develop a community of practice, a learning design community of practice across the system to and enhance that connectivity and communication across our colleges. We have some colleges who were adopting professional development related to the Healthy Course checklist immediately. We had some colleges who were developing their own tools for evaluating courses, getting courses set to run at the beginning of a term. So by creating a community of practice, which has been our next milestone, it was just put into place this past summer. We have been able to kind of ensure that our momentum to our quality efforts is perpetuated through these collaborative communication opportunities. But I will note that we're still in the middle of it. I said it's been 3 years since the chancellor's charge to envision and move toward Colorado Online Consortium, and each step that we take is a different milestone on that path. But again, we're still in the process of this. We take a step forward, we take a step back, we take another step forward. But ultimately, these collaborative opportunities, such as through our community of practice, are critical because, like I learned from our hotel shuttle driver who had the answer to how to connect these two terminals together at the airport, right? It's those who are kind of doing the work every day, those who are interacting with our students every day, who often have I don't know, I don't want to say best answers, but they have the ideas related to what we should try next to meet the needs of our learners in the best ways that we possibly can.
Thank you, Amanda. I actually love what you described about starting with the standards and the work to implement them broadly helped you see where the gaps were, and then you made decisions to fill in those gaps and do that improvement. So that's just, it's a classic benefit of a quality assurance approach, because it allows you to tackle the quality problems much more broadly, because often they aren't even about design. Design's a piece of it, right? So I love the story you told there. So in the little bit of time we have left, I want to share with you how we're going to do this, because yes, you're involved. So I have a final wrap-up question that I'm going to pose to the panelists. And then there's time for Q&A, but I want to ask you, I'll give you a choice, because I know you're all really good at multitasking. You can either ask the panelists any questions that you have, or I invite you to answer the same question that I'm going to ask them. And so would love to hear your thoughts about that. And we've got a little bit of time to do this. So you can begin thinking, because you'll have the advantage of the few minutes while they're answering this question to think about what your response would be. So, and we do have some mic runners out there. So I'm going to start in the middle. I'm going to be crazy and start in the middle of the panel now, just to show you that I too can be flexible. So, all right. So I'm going to start with Fernando. So what advice do you have for the QM community to identify the next milestone, or to build and maintain existing momentum to best serve our students in the future? What is your advice?
Well, the first comment is that any one of you could be sitting in this panel. So it's not like we have the solution just because we're part of the community. The second thing I say is related to what I already said. Innovation, flexibility, constructing a future that's still out there, but it's not defined, requires our work, requires going through this reference that I told you, Theory U, is like go 3D through it's a personal journey. So my invitation for the next few days here in this conference, make it a mission to find at least, first of all, following even the same structure, connect with the heart. Forget your job title, forget what your boss told you to do, what have you, at least for now, right? We won't tell. But connect with the heart, that's something that really drives you. And when you meet people and reach out to people, everyone is here is someone you know or is a friend that you have not met yet. So it's really an opportunity to meet people, meet friends that you had not met. Start the conversation, skip the typical, what's the weather like, what it would like to get here, all that. Go straight to the chase, go straight to the heart, and have ready at hand the 1 or 2 or 3 things that really drive you, and have that be the starting point of the conversation. And hopefully by the end of this conference, you'll find some other partner in crime that you can start prototyping, throwing about ideas, just as how this whole story about QM got started. So that's my invitation.
Wow, we have just closed down the house here, haven't we?
We're just getting intimate.
All right, well, we'll soldier on because that's what we do. And I'm going to go to you next, Amanda, for your advice for the QM community.
Well, I'm a little more analytic than Fernando, I guess. So I say start with the goal, but if you can connect that goal to the heart, I think that would be a better place to start. Well, one of my core kind of quotes to live by is from FDR, who I'm gonna butcher this probably, but it was to above all, try something, right? So take a method, try it. If it doesn't work, admit it and move on and try something else. That's a paraphrase. But above all, try something. So, right, we identify what the goal is, and then we have to take a first step, right? It may not be the right first step, but we have to start somewhere. And really for our Colorado Online Learning Design subcommittee, that's kind of the mantra we've been living by, was one of rapid prototyping. So, well, we got to try it. We got to gather some feedback, gather some data. Okay, now we have to pivot and move somewhere else. But each of us needs to kind of take that approach within the spaces where we do have agency and power. And I will also say, I guess one reason I'm here is because I was part of the 7th edition rubric committee, but there are many others. Raise your hand if you were part of that, right? Right, each of us within this community has various spaces of agency, right, to move forward as well. If you weren't part of that committee, but you participated in the QM community survey to give your feedback on the rubric, raise your hand, right? There should be many more of you, right? That was actually a critical, right? That was critical feedback that we used in the rubric committee to come to the decisions that we did, right? So even if it feels like a small step you're taking, right, it's still important that you use those opportunities that you have available to you to make your voice and feedback heard. And then each of you does that also in your professional spaces for the sake of your learners.
Thank you. And so Paula, I'm going to go to you.
Sure. So similarly to both, I would say definitely be strategic. You have to have goals. For our organization, we frequently say that the Quality Matters rubric serves as a true north for quality for us. If you don't know what direction you're headed in, how are you going to get there? And so you have to have a goal. You have to have, a plan for how you're going to get there. But don't feel like you are solely responsible for the weight of getting to that destination, for reaching that goal. You have to build capacity. You have to build teamwork to get towards that goal. You have to be flexible and responsive, but above all else, all of us in education have to remember that our student is our ultimate goal. Doing the best that we can do for them, meeting them where they need us to meet them, and being responsive and flexible to our students is the ultimate goal. That's why we're all here. And so I just want to put that out there as a charge, as we are continuing this momentum and moving toward innovation and using all of our technological advances and AI tools to make us more efficient and more effective at our jobs. Don't forget that student element, because they're really why we're here. And if we forget them in the midst of everything else, then we've lost our direction.
Thank you. All right, Morris.
Sure. So it's pressure starting, it's definitely pressure finishing. So I think Deb has something out for me today. So one of my favorite quotes when talking about teaching and learning and online learning is the famous quote by Einstein that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so we must not forget, as learning designers, instructional technologists, faculty members, subject matter experts, et cetera, that we are in the field of education, which is a field of practice. And so just as in other industries, such as the medical field, there is practice that's taking place to find new medications, to find different solutions. We cannot continue to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. So my advice would be to the community that we go into our labs of sorts and we practice and we try new things that are truly innovative, that we don't try to stick to making everything fit back into the same boxes, and that we look at things like the rubric and see how can we possibly apply this to our institution or to a particular issue or problem while we're still maintaining and dealing with normalcy and keeping our operations or things of that nature running. But we also think about practicing new things that are truly going to be resourceful or solutions to the issues and the things that our students need. And as one of the other panelists mentioned, there are different steps to quality. It's not a one size or a one step, but if we don't practice and if we don't try these different things out, we will continue to have this conversation. And
so we have 10 minutes. We left 10 minutes at the end to invite you to share with us what you think the advice should be for the community. And we have a couple of mics. And if you'd rather ask a question of one of the panelists, you can do that too. But you are us, we are you. We want to hear what you think and what you would charge us with. Oh, right here. Thank you. Run, Yaping, run.
Hi, everyone. I think I'm speaking for.
Who are you? Introduce yourself for us.
Hi, Megan Van Buskirk from Excelsior University. I just wanted to speak for probably a few of us here at the table and say, to your point, Morris, about holism, and Fernando about flexibility, some other things that I've heard today, I think it means a lot to us to think about the iterative process. What do you do when you've already met these quality matter standards? And for us, it's stopping thinking about the learner as just an academic, because there's so much more to their identity than being an academic. So when we've done everything that we can do with the objectives and with the learning engagement, we have to think of those things that are incorporating the experiential learning and the flexibility and the non-academic support, so that we're meeting the needs of the full learner and not just the academic.
Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. All right. Come on now. All right, over here. Because I know this is not a room full of wallflowers. I've seen you, I've heard you.
I am Diana Ostrander, Anoka Technical College. I'm a PhD in 19th century British literature, and I teach to nurses and electrician, students. And so that was a big change for me. But as I'm listening to these amazing speakers, your strengths are showing. So I don't know if you're familiar with Gallup strengths, but that has greatly influenced my ability to be flexible with my students. I hear learner, I hear adaptability, I hear the woo strength, winning others over, like strangers are people I just haven't connected with yet. All the relator strengths. So what my suggestion is, I use a free tool. I find out my students' strengths, because if I, as a learner, tell them about the joys of the path of learning and they don't have the learner strength, I am putting them to sleep. So part of really, you want to know your students. And a lot of them are adaptable. They've had hardships in their life, which give them the ability to, handle, change better than I handle it. So anyway, I learn their strengths right away. I have them internalize them, and then I make sure that I teach to their strengths. And that helps me a lot. Just throwing that out.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I took away from that too, that, if students can be flexible, we need to be too, right? So.
Hi, my name's Hampton. I'm with a vendor exhibitor with PlayPosit, and I am newer to the online education space. My question is for Amanda. How did you choose which faculty to participate in the consortium and the decisions moving forward? Did you include detractors? Did you include, it seems to be a challenge that I hear from a lot of instructional designers, is that faculty are not always wide open to change or suggestions on how to do things differently.
Very diplomatically put, I just say.
Yeah, well, our subcommittee leaders kind of help to identify faculty across the colleges who would, they volunteered, right? So we have faculty who are advocates for their learners, faculty who are advocates for quality matters, faculty who are advocates for some of those different informing perspectives and models that I had broadly mentioned, who have wanted to be a part of that process. But then we had to socialize our quality standards as well. And we did hear pushback, right? We did hear pushback from faculty who were like, I teach math, I don't know what a diversity, equity, inclusion criterion means for me in my particular discipline. And I mean, Gloria Ledson-Billings had a response to that as well, through culturally relevant pedagogy, that basically comes down to one of the challenges is not knowing what you don't know, and kind of tying back to what Fernando had, one of the things that you said so well about how flexibility begins with the individual, or flexibility is internal first. So we heard that feedback. We encourage our faculty advocates to help bring that work back to their individual colleges. As I said, implementation is in the hands of the colleges. But I mean, change management also tells us that when you can connect what is seen as new to what someone is already doing, their existing practices, it does help to with that acceptance and adoption of change. So that is an approach that we have been taking as well. Through the Learning Design Community of Practice, we have been collecting teaching resources that, broader set of faculty beyond those who were involved in the creation of our standards, have already been doing some of this work. They have already been very actively, deliberately, thoughtfully applying the standards before the standards were set, right? So we have been actively trying to kind of recruit and collect those artifacts together to gain the momentum that we need to help expand the reach, expand the professional development needed so that people can do the work of finding out what they don't know and working to redress that. I mean, there's so much more than that, but that's a start to answer.
Yeah, and I'm going to take license here to say one of the amazing things about this community is many of you wear multiple hats. not just for QM, but even at your own institution. Many of you teach and are instructional designers. How many of you fall into that category that you do? Look at this, right? So, so in terms of the faculty instructional designer relationship, that's another we are them and they are us kind of conversation. And I would, and as somebody who was a faculty member for almost 30 years, it hurts a little bit when I hear the comments about faculty resistance, but I understand it. And I think, I don't know, Morris, I don't know if it was you, one of the panelists talked about one of our charges is about building trust. And it's building trust externally, which was my point at the beginning, but also internally. And I think, faculty who trust the initiatives are lots more willing to be engaged in the process. So I think that's a key for those relationships is trust building. So anyway, I'm down off my soapbox. We can take one more.
Oh, I was going to say, well, my name is John Neely, first of all, and I teach math at Hawkeye Community College in Waterloo, Iowa. And I was going to say something that I think is very important that would benefit greatly online education would be somehow getting a hold of integrity and honesty. Or so we have we just started using Alex, but our president didn't want us to have it proctored, and we get students misplaced all the time that do not succeed and then have to back up because they cheated on the Alex. It's a placement exam, and there's other situations too. And so especially when it's online education where cheating is a very much easier, I guess, than it is, at least in math or whatever. But so how do we address that? How do we address the integrity issue?
So I could probably turn this question to anybody in this room, but do any of the panelists want to take that question? Or you could say no.
I can.
Okay.
I'll offer this, and it may seem a little esoteric to some people, because sometimes we think about academic integrity and things of that nature. We immediately look at how do we police it. But my take is if we think and start to think about communities, and that these are learning communities, and in communities there are standards. And if we can get into building those relationships, the same thing you mentioned about trust, and to start to talk about the integrity for the content, the professions, because our students are coming to our educational, whether it be K through 12 or higher education, they're coming to learn and be prepared for the future. And so we have to start having these conversations about this community and these kind of like the honor code system and things of that nature, but from a more intentional kind of perspective, and bring in what that means if cheating happens. What does that mean for the profession? What does that mean for them as a person? And kind of have some of those where, and it's not going to solve for everyone, but for many of them that's there, then that could help to alleviate things. I also mentioned in a recent panel I was on around assessment and academic integrity, that I mentioned that in most communities where there is crime, where there is bad behavior, there's typically deficits. And so, and you could do studies to find out and validate that. I don't have time for to give that. So where are deficits in these learning environments, in these communities that we need to solve for, as opposed to the other thing of just policing our learners and our students? And if we look at solving for those deficits, there'll be less need for the integrity issues.
Okay. All right, well, that's a great note to end on, but I will give a little plug for the newest edition of the higher ed rubric. Actually has a new standard in there that asks that it is made clear to students what they are, what is cheating, what is allowed, what assistance can you get on in the work that you're doing. Because it's not clear to students, it's hardly clear to us as instructors, right? About can they use AI? right? How can they use AI? So being, that's part of the trust building too, is starting first with transparency. So we're gonna have to close the session. I would like to ask you all to give a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much. And I think, but I'm not sure because they don't tell me all of this, that there may be announcements. Are there announcements right now? Staff, do you know? Oh, apparently not. So you're gonna have to brave your own to go have a break and then find your sessions, but you guys are resourceful. I know you can do it. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. You guys are-